Liam, we've obviously been working a lot on international growth. From our point of view, I think the two most compelling reasons for agencies and clients to be focusing on international growth. One is resilience, but two is growth and raising the ceiling. Do you feel that they're the most compelling? Do you think there are other big reasons that people should be looking at? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with this. I think those two things probably splinter out into a couple of additional areas, but I think the most common reasons that we see for advertisers or for businesses to look to grow international is, at the moment particularly, it's like diversification of risk. I think we saw through COVID how much pressure businesses were put under, and those businesses who were in multiple markets or multiple regions were actually able to benefit from different markets opening up a little bit quicker because their COVID rules were slightly less restrictive and so on. So those ones who were investing in multiple markets at the time were actually a little bit more resilient and able to kind of continue to grow their business at a time when it was so difficult. So that ability to be agile and pivot is so key. But what you also see then from a kind of a resilience perspective is around competition. So when you're kind of stuck in one market or focused purely on one market, that competitive element becomes quite difficult and it can become very saturated quite quickly. But if you're a business who has a really strong business model and you know you have an offering that customers globally are looking for, it not only gives you the opportunity to kind of diversify in terms of that competition, but also give you an opportunity to kind of benefit from first mover advantage as well. So by going after a market where the saturation is quite low, you could actually go in really quickly, really agile, and just launch your business model in there as well. So that then kind of feeds us into the growth perspective. So that comes from kind of a variety of different reasons. It could be you need additional customers, particularly if it's like a lead gen business, you might just be looking for customer acquisition. You don't massively mind about ROI and profitability. Whereas then if you are looking at that, you can start to bounce around different markets and try find where are your highest value customers. And it's not going to be based purely by geography. It'll be based on things like interest, like a propensity to spend and so on. So international gives you that opportunity now that things have become more borderless to find your customers who are the highest value to you rather than kind of segmenting it by geography.
You mentioned before that that businesses kind of needed to diversify during COVID. Have you worked with advertisers that have been more motivated to do that, or where COVID specifically has almost forced businesses to look at international growth, to diversify and to secure the future?
Absolutely. I think even from my own family's perspective, we have like a local off license that was all like, this isn't just looking at international, but it's looking at that need to transform and to modernize. And international is essentially where things are going with that. Yeah. If we look at like us from a consumer perspective, how many times a week or kind of a month are you actually purchasing things that are from different markets that you don't realize? So at a time when kind of COVID came in, businesses were forced to do that transformation. So we've worked with a couple who, not only from a COVID perspective, but it was particularly travel businesses that we saw who were starting to look at monitor when different countries were opening up for travel at different rates, and they would just shift their marketing budget dependent on where those markets were coming through as well. So they put their bets on it, and we used to see them coming through. The same's happening now for kind of other geopolitical reasons. So for example, the war in Ukraine has been a massive one, but we recently had a brilliant success story with a company called Air Baltic, who when the flights to Russia were essentially shut down, they had to completely pivot their business model, and they ended up opening 5 to 6 new routes as part of their business and actually doubling their international growth in that time. So like a fantastic way to really quickly be able to pivot when you know that your business model is strong.
We've had to adapt and change over the last few years as well. Obviously COVID's a massive part of it, but things like the cost of living crisis in the UK and Brexit are like two big players in that. And I think we've seen across a range of our clients the challenges that they've had that come with it. And that's where we're seeing obviously the most important reason for international growth. So I think what we've been doing is obviously working with you guys in terms of the International Growth Agency Programme to help us kind of put together our international growth playbook for Journey Further. So I think, yeah, if you could just explain a little bit about what the International Growth Agency Programme is.
Yeah, absolutely. So our program is built to I suppose to help agencies to help their customers grow internationally. So obviously Google are a massive partner when it comes to like digital media and across the board, but agencies for us, like we wouldn't be where we are without agencies. And you, for the most part, are the complete experts when it comes to media management and when it comes to even Google advertising. But we also know that there's some limitations to the amount of knowledge or tools or resources that you can get access to that we have. So within the International Growth Agency Programme, what we're trying to do is give agencies access to that knowledge, to those tools, so that you can kind of be that multiplier effect and help hundreds more businesses, thousands more businesses that we would be able to help directly. So the International Growth Agency Programme essentially looks to make agencies the experts and be able to help their businesses across media, but also looking at things like operations. So when localization, logistics, payments and so on start to come into it, agencies can now be that kind of central resource for their clients to help them across the entire end-to-end international growth journey.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, like obviously we've worked with the International Growth Agency Programme for the last 2 years now, and there's been a lot of training from Google on your side for us and to help us and getting us up to speed on the different tools and things like that, and I think it's really helped us shape our proposition at Journey Further for it and showed us obviously that there's not a specific approach you can go for, it has to be a tailored approach, and I think that's one of the things we've focused on this year, isn't it, Chris?
I mean, it's something we pride ourselves on, frankly, is trying to listen and understand specifically to the client's needs and objectives. It's something that frankly I'm really proud of at Journey Further, that we do across the board, not just in international growth, but yeah, specifically on international growth, there's a huge range of things that we can do. That I mean, that can be as simple as just brand search campaigns in English in an overseas territory. But then obviously we start to leverage the IGAP resources, we start to work with specialists within our company, and it can go as far as, like you just said, Liam, the operational review, logistics. There are so many different factors that make up or that constitute success and that are reliant on both the agency and the client being able and willing to work on it and to think about that before they get into a market. It feels to me like putting media live in a market is that 10% of an iceberg that you can see on the surface. The 90% below is all the kind of the less glamorous work underneath that goes into understanding a culture, that goes into understanding logistics, that can potentially scupper it.
And when it comes to, so you obviously say you have that like tailored approach for every client, but I think as well when it comes to international growth, there probably is a journey that a lot of clients can take to help kind of safeguard them. Not everything is going to be completely tailored, but have you managed to build that out and then be able to kind of take that standardization and then apply kind of tailored recommendations within those areas or anything along those lines?
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, the first, like our starting point in terms of assessing where our clients are ready is taking inspiration from the IGAP kind of checklist. So we put together our own Journey Further checklist, more tailored around obviously our clients and what we see and trying to assess if they're ready to go internationally. And it varies quite a lot, doesn't it? Obviously we had a lot of clients that are already targeting internationally, but like Chris mentioned, like very basic campaigns. So it's how do we take them that step further, but then also the ones that are just in the UK. And to be fair, a lot of them you do tend to find that they're like, just don't know where to start, don't know what to look at, and that's where those IGAP resources come into play, and we can really help them identify, okay, this is an area you're ready in, this is an area you're not, and just build up the proposition from that and what we can do to get them to be ready to grow internationally.
I think something that I really value about the IGAP resources, it almost accelerates that process that Danielle just described. That, like certainly for myself, I've learned the hard way with advertisers previously, well before we were on the IGAP program, that you can have a well-structured set of campaigns, it can be optimised, it can be working as well as it possibly can. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work if the fundamentals aren't there. So if a market expects delivery in like 1 to 2 days, for example, and the client can't ship it for 10 days, doesn't matter how well your PPC campaigns are working, it's still going to fall down. We've kind of learned that the hard way with some clients, but equally the access to those IGAP resources means you can kind of accelerate that and not have to learn the hard way. You can get access to that knowledge and input.
So you've kind of talked about the different stages. So obviously you start with asking each individual client kind of what their challenges are, then try to help them with that starting point of what markets should they or could they go into, and also probably what markets should they not go into, and then being able to help them on that operational stage around kind of localizing and so on. Do you have any examples of any clients that you've gone through that process with?
Yeah, we've gone through the full process really with one of our travel clients, and again it was motivated by COVID really kind of restricting how they were able to do business, and them recognizing an opportunity but also a need to adapt and to be more resilient. We essentially took them through the full process. That was helping them with market research, it was helping them understand the scale of opportunity in different countries and prioritizing, but we also worked with them to help to secure translation resource. We did a lot of work in terms of optimising their existing English language structure and kind of setting it up as best as possible for success and to be able to adapt. And what we did then, once we'd done all of that, was to develop a bespoke translation process, because frankly they had challenges around budgets and kind of full-scale translations just were out of scope. So we started to develop bespoke processes to work around that and to help them adapt and move beyond that. And that really evolved quite rapidly. So we managed to roll out 24 languages, which covered 29 countries for them in 9 months. And the process changed significantly as we went through it. So every time we set up one language, we learned things that we then moved into the next language. And it got to the point where we kind of went from taking 4 to 5 working days to get a full set of campaigns translated to a matter of hours, frankly. And it was part of why we were able to roll out so quickly was developing those bespoke tools and being able to lean on the resource from the program as well.
I think 29 markets in 9 months is absolutely incredible pace of work. So that's really impressive.
It was a lot of effort. It nearly broke me. But it was something that was enormously important to the clients. It was the client that we've had a long-standing relationship with. We have a really great relationship with them. And it was enormously important to them, so it became a priority for us, and it became our key focus was understanding how to do that as effectively as possible. But what it meant was that approximately 30% of their budget by the end of that process was being spent overseas, but it was also generating them bookings at a cost-effective rate that was comparative to the UK, where they've been established for over 30 years. So to go into markets where they've not built a brand was really an enormous result for us, because it's entirely new ground for them, for us. And to do it at that scale was a big project.
So if you were speaking to a client now and they just wanted a quick summary of where to start, what are the 3 top tips that you would suggest them when starting with their international growth journey?
It's a good question. I think firstly I would say research your market thoroughly. There are so many differences and so many different things that will impact performance, so thorough research will pay dividends. Secondly, ensure you have the budget to compete in the market in a meaningful way. Too many companies go in with a very small amount of budget and just can't take meaningful results from it, so don't learn. And then finally, I would say launch in one market or a small number of markets first and iterate and use those learnings to improve and adapt your process as you go, because it will be far more powerful than trying to change what you've done retrospectively.
For me, the final one's the most important. It's adapting and overcoming as you go along. Like how you start at the beginning and the process that you take might not work for every market. Every market is going to be slightly different. So I think, learning from that, and like Chris mentioned, iterating it as you go along. I think that's the key part of it.
And I think 2 other things that I would add to it as well is, one, around expectation setting. I think when you're going into a brand new market, a lot of mistakes, or one of the big mistakes that businesses make, is they compare it to the UK, where they've spent years and years building a brand, building a loyal customer base, launch in a new market and expect the same results in a short space of time. So make sure that you're kind of being realistic with those. The second tip that I would give is that a lot of businesses don't have the experience necessarily, or the knowledge, or the access to resources to be able to do this themselves. So it's imperative for them to find the right partner who can help them to do that, and help them with things like translation, and ensuring that they can trust that level of translation the insights that they're getting and make recommendations based off that. So I think they're my two top tips.